In this episode, let's discover what the forming crew, rebar installers, masonry crew, window installers, and crane operator do. First up, the forming crew. It all starts with the layout. This is where the layout crew reads the construction drawings and lays out where the new walls and columns are to be built. Here you can see that the drawings are all accessed by using an iPad. By using measuring tapes and chalk lines, they mark precisely where the walls and columns are to be placed as a guide for the next crew. In this case, the layout crew has also marked the wall thickness and spray paint to help keep the work organized. Formwork is built and then reused again and again. Here you can see that the crane operator is carefully lowering the formwork for a concrete column down to the workers who are positioning it into place. The layout on many floors are what are called typical floors, allowing this formwork, previously used on the floor below, to be efficiently utilized again. Here, the formwork section for this wall is being hoisted and relocated to another spot on the floor to be used again. The crew guides it carefully into place. Once one side of the formwork is placed and secured where it needs to be, then the electrical and mechanical trades install their sleeves or embedded items. Next in is the crew to do the rebar installation, also known as the rod busters, though we'll cover that in more detail in just another minute. After the crew closes up the wall and column forms and pours the concrete, the forming for the next floor slab above is put into place. To do this, the formwork from the floor below is reused. It's brought up by the forming crew and the crane operator working together and put into place using this method called fly forming. The crew lowers the formwork below. Next, they carefully roll it out of the building. The crane then hoists a section of formwork like this one, called a table form, away from the building and up one floor. Once it's carefully positioned into place, the forming crew repeats the same process again and again until all of the table forms are brought up, getting ready to pour the next floor above. Now it's concrete pour day. Concrete is discharged from the trucks into a pump on the ground level. From here, the concrete travels up through a long series of steel pipes up to the slab formwork up above. The pump is operated by this technician who adjusts the flow and the position of the boom arm using the joysticks and buttons on this remote. The forming crew workers spread the concrete evenly and check for thickness using this wire gauge. Another worker is using a vibrator seen here that agitates and rattles the concrete to help it flow better around the rebar and evenly up against the formwork. This worker here is using a tool called a bull float. Together with skill and experience developed over time, this action smooths out the concrete slab here into the flat and level surface that is required. A few hours later, after the concrete sets up some more, these workers pass over the surface again with a machine called a power float, or as they call it, the helicopter.
Let's go back now and take a closer look at the rebar installers, also known as the rod worker or rod busters. The rebar arrives on site in bundles and is hoisted up by the crane. The rod busters start by referring to a rebar drawing that has a number on it that is associated with a matching tag that is on each bundle of rebar. Each bundle comes with a tag and a shop drawing to show how each custom cut and bent piece is to be installed. Between instructions from site management and the rebar foreman, directions are given to the installers such as where to start, the areas of priority, and how the rebar will be placed and tied. Some pieces of rebar will need to be cut on site for various reasons, which involves use of this gas-powered quick cut saw. This may be the case where rebar has to be cut to allow pipes and ducts to run through the slab or wall. As the rebar is cut and put into place, the rod busters tie it all together with a tie wire. It's important to securely tie the pieces of rebar together so that the bars all stay in place during the concrete pour. There are a number of different methods to tie it, depending on the site conditions and the instructions given. The tie wire is typically doubled up, slipped underneath, brought across, twisted over into a knot, and the slack wire is cut off. Once the rebar installation is complete, it's time to call the engineer for a rebar inspection. Every bar matters and will be checked so that nothing is missing or out of place. The person on the right is the rebar inspector. They look at the drawings and carefully inspect the rebar that has been installed. Once the rebar inspection has passed, it's time to double-check the formwork and then pour the concrete.
Now, let's take a look at the masonry crew, also commonly known as the bricklayers. This crew starts by reading the architectural drawings, looking for the specific wall types that are to be built from masonry, seen here as hollow concrete block filled in with the diagonal lines. Next, they read the floor plans for the layout details on where these walls are to be built. You can see here the diagonal lines on the walls around the garbage chutes and air shafts show that they are to be built from concrete block. Laying masonry then starts with mixing mortar in a mixer, shown on the left, and then the batches of mortar are brought to the masons in a forklift. Working from scaffolding is very common, so as a mason, you learn about the safe way to erect scaffolding. The foreman crew builds the essential structural concrete walls that are required to hold up the building above. Then, masonry block walls are built in the places where they are required either for a high-strength purpose or an enhanced fire resistance rating, like here for these electrical closets. On this wall, the masonry crew has installed ties embedded into the block wall, projecting out, which will be used later to secure another layer of decorative masonry called masonry veneer, typically either stone or clay bricks. Not all of the brick walls you see have been built by the masons. Here you see that brick-faced precast concrete panels made in a factory have been installed, giving a very similar finished appearance. Now, let's take a look at the window installers. It all starts with carefully positioning and installing a metal track to the concrete floor slab, which the crew will install the window sections into. Sections of window are double-checked all around for quality control, and then they are prepped to be lifted. Two installers, using industrial-strength suction grips, lift each window section into place. This system is called window wall, where the windows are positioned on the floor slab below and secured to the slab above. Once in place, the installer clamps the sections together. Then they drill into the concrete slab above. Then, using high-grade specialty fasteners, they attach them to the concrete slab above. A typical installation looks like this, and here you can see is another window system called curtain wall, where the window system is attached to the outside edge of the concrete slabs. This window system gives the look of a continuous wall of glass.
Next, we have the crane operators. To start off, you apply to become an apprentice, also called an oiler. This job involves the setup and maintenance of the crane. As well, the apprentice also works as a swamper. They are the workers that connect and disconnect the loads that are attached to the crane. It's essential to learn what it's like to work with a crane from the ground. Once your required hours and the necessary training are complete, your work as a crane operator may begin. Tower cranes are affected by the weather, especially the wind, so that's the first thing you would be checking when arriving on site in the morning. As the operator climbs up the crane, they do their daily routine inspection, looking at the critical structural areas, the nuts and bolts, and the connections. The crane operator works alone in the cab all day. Aside from meeting other workers at the beginning and the end of the day, their only contact is by phone or radio. On a typical day, they perform hundreds of lifts, unloading trucks, pouring concrete, and moving equipment and materials around the site. Everything they do is related to safety. For every load they pick up, they have to select the safest route for it. Some of the most important traits for a tower crane operator is being able to stay calm under stress. clear thinking, and good hand-eye coordination. The days can be long, often 10 to 12 hours. One benefit, though, you'll get to see many amazing sunrises and sunsets. For more videos and resources, go to www.boltonline.org.